It started with an email received by Hannah. See, Hannah lived in Sydney, Australia, and while the air was warm, this message was extremely cold. The message was from an anonymous sender calling themselves Sally, and it said, "I'll just keep emailing because I think this is worthy of your attention." Initially, Hannah Grundy dismissed this message. She felt this was, just another scam that made it into her inbox instead of the spam box. However, something about this was different. This is not like usual scams. Usual scams entice you to open it. Anyways, Hannah dismissed this message. But then she got another one, and this one was very different. A second email from Sally. This one had a warning, a link, and the link said, "This contains disturbing material," and a sense of urgency that Hannah couldn't explain. It created a kind of fear response in her, and it compelled her to click. Clicking this link brought her to a website, and this website, horrified her, because at the very top it said, "The destruction of Hannah," and under it was a poll, an anonymous poll, which were asking people how exactly they would like to destroy Hannah, with various options stated, and each option was one vile sexual act after another. But this wasn't even the worst part. Below the poll was a forum, and clicking on the forum, Hannah was completely horrified, because going through them all, she found over 600 images of her, and the images were of her actual face, and these faces were of her happy moments that she had in life, such as when she graduated university or was enjoying a holiday on a beach. But these faces were stitched onto pornographic bodies that did not belong to her, but looked so realistic you couldn't tell otherwise. And then there were the disgusting comments. One of the posters said, "I'm closing in on this SLUT." Another one said, "I can't wait to hide in her house and come out when she's alone." There were a plethora of disturbing comments, one after the other, and disturbing to say, Hannah was shocked. Who would bother doing this? One particular image disturbed her greatly because it was her face lying naked on a bed with a man's fist in her mouth. And another, there was a hand wrapped around her throat. One violent image after another. Now these are obviously what we call deepfakes today, and they've gotten much more sophisticated than what Hannah was dealing with at the time. But they seem so realistic, even as images, that they left an indelible mark on her mind.
It was so disturbing that someone had spent so much time doing that to my images that my brain just said, to keep me safe, I cannot see any more of that website.
And at the time, we didn't really know how to deal with this kind of stuff. It was out there, and there were no real laws against it. But what made this really sickening is when you see the context in which they were presented, because on these forums were comments that were just about threats and violence against her. Someone had leaked all her personal details, her full name, the suburb that she lived, where she worked, and even links to her private Instagram. This was no longer simply sharing deep fakes. It was harassment, and it seemed at targeting her without her knowing about it. And that's probably why she received this email from Sally. But how did we get here? Who had Hannah wronged? Well, Hannah lived a pretty normal life. She was an Australian school teacher, a university graduate. She had a happy life in Sydney with her boyfriend, Chris. But after receiving this email, that life vanished. She was now paranoid. She always had security cameras around her house and was always location sharing apps, fear she might be abducted or worse. There was a clear mental toll being placed on her head from an enemy that she couldn't see or fight back against. But while this website she got a link for was about her, there were also other women on these forums, women that she knew, women that were her friends, such as Rachel and Jessica from her old job at the bar. This meant this wasn't just some random troll on the internet. This was someone she knew closely, that her friends knew closely. She sat down with her boyfriend to make a list of possible suspects, and they think they had someone, so she took this list and went to the police. But perhaps when all these deepfakes were just emerging, the police didn't really have the tools to really fight back against this or help her. They instead questioned Hannah if she provoked this person. Hannah was surprised, but she still expected them to go and investigate this. Well, months passed, 5 months in fact, and then she finally heard back from the police, and their response was extremely disappointing. they dropped her case due to insufficient evidence. But in those 5 months, Hannah believed the person she had suspected was the right one all along. How did she find this person? Well, Hannah figured out that her and all the other victims had one common friend on Facebook, a man who had worked at the bar with them and who was very close, a man named Andy. Andy was more than just a mutual friend. He was actually a very good friend. He'd gone on holidays with them. Sometimes when the girls were out late, he would make sure they come home safely. He was even going to be invited to Hannah's wedding. How could he betray her this way? Determined not to give up, this time Hannah and her boyfriend got the help of a lawyer and a digital forensic expert who reorganized the evidence for them, and then they resubmitted this to the police. And this time, the police did take it seriously. Within a week, they raided Andy's home, seizing his computer and hard drives. On the spot, Andy confessed. He said he was the one who had created and distributed this deepfake content. In fact, Andy had been making these deepfakes for a long time. Andy was charged with sharing digitally altered intimate images under Commonwealth telecommunications law. In his defense, he said he did this because of long-term substance abuse and an addiction to extreme X-rated content, and this brought out the worst in him. However, this defense did not get him anywhere in court, and ultimately he was sentenced to 9 years in prison with the earliest possible parole date in December 2029. Now there's one more mystery. Who is this mysterious person Sally, this woman? Well, it turns out this wasn't really a woman. This was a New Zealand private investigator and former police officer who was monitoring this site for another client and who decided to go out of the way because he could not stay silent because of everything he could see that was happening to Hannah. People were using AI to add bruises to her body. Hannah's story ends here, but really, it's just one line in a much bigger story, a new kind of crime. Now, we've come a long way with AI technology since 2021. Early deepfakes leaned on something called GANs, which are two AI models made to compete with each other, with each battle leading to better and lifelike results. Today, most are powered by diffusion models, the same tech behind popular image generators, and that's why the barrier to entry has collapsed. What once took a lab and a supercomputer can now be accessed via an app on your phone. Let me show you something. Which one of these is real and which one is fake?
I'm gonna show you some magic. It's the real thing. I mean,
One man with total control of billions of people's stolen data, all their secrets, their lives, their futures.
Fan base. I feel really blessed because I genuinely love the process of manipulating people online for money.
It's getting harder to tell the difference. And therein lies the problem. This isn't just a cool trick anymore when it's being used for nefarious reasons. And really, the government is paranoid, and they should be, because as far back as 2018, the US Congress warned that technology like this could undermine public trust in recorded images and video. Look at search engines these days, YouTube, Google. You need to disclose if you're using generative AI content. And if you don't disclose, imagine the harm that you could do. Imagine what you could get away with. And many people are using that today. Scams are being committed at such an extent that the US Department of Homeland Security and partner agencies now flag deepfakes as a growing national security risk. So what do some of these scams look like? Well, in January 2024, a French woman named Annie believed she was in a relationship with no one else but Brad Pitt, and she was in this relationship for 18 months. This woman was initially contacted by Brad Pitt's mother on Instagram. Back then, Brad Pitt needed some money to pay for customs on a gift, so she obliged. And later, Brad Pitt needed money for an emergency kidney treatment. She also covered this. And you know what convinced her? An AI-generated photo of Brad Pitt in the hospital. It seemed she never for once doubted this relationship. And why would you, when there's a news clip being shared that confirmed your romance to Brad Pitt? Of course, we know this was an AI-generated image, but now imagine her shock when she saw a gossip magazine with the real Brad Pitt and his new girlfriend. This made Anne feel very betrayed and somewhat suspicious. So the scammer sent Anne an anchor talking about this exclusive relationship with one suspected individual who goes by her own name. This video comforted Anne, but then she was betrayed again when Brad Pitt confirmed his relationship officially in June 2024. Anne decided it was time to break up with Brad Pitt for real. But the scammers weren't letting up. They tried to get more money out of her by posing as Special FBI Agent John Smith. Anne was not going to get her heart broken twice, so she contacted the police immediately. But if you think it's all fun and games, it's not. Other than losing money, the embarrassment and the shock of it all made Anne almost take her own life 3 times. She had lost over 830,000 euros by scammers. That's $850,000. And when she went public, many mocked her. But Anne wasn't foolish. She was the victim of a weaponized AI scam. But it's not just romance scams. The overwhelming majority of deepfake videos online are estimated to be non-consensual X-rated content, and this is above 90%. It used to take thousands of photos of a celebrity to train an AI. Now a single selfie can be enough. Whole apps and Telegram is one of the worst offenders, where entire groups exist for one purpose: to undress women or to paste their faces into explicit videos. It's industrialized harassment. And this is a global epidemic. In 2021, Taiwan was rocked by a major scandal. A popular YouTuber known as Xiao Yu was exposed for running a sophisticated deepfake X-rated operation. He used AI software to superimpose the faces of well-known local actresses, news anchors, and influencers onto the bodies of X-rated performers. He didn't just make the videos, he built a business, selling access to a private club for a subscription fee. His illegal earnings surpassed 10 million new Taiwan dollars, or over 300,000 USD, revealing a lucrative and vile black market. Now deepfakes are everywhere, and they're getting worse. Imagine being used in the jury, surveillance footage, a body cam video, a recorded confession. As they become harder to tell apart, it's hard to know what's real and what's not. For example, even in 2023, during a murder trial in Colorado, dentist James Craig allegedly asked his daughter to create a deepfake video of his wife. His wife Angela supposedly requested poisonous ingredients that led to her own death. The problem was, as you guessed it, this was digital manipulation. None of it was real. And there have already been several incidents of cybercrimes. A finance worker in Hong Kong was tricked into transferring $25 million after scammers used deepfakes to impersonate the company's CFO and multiple other colleagues in a video conference call. This is only going to get worse. We are entering a world where evidence is no longer objective. Reality itself becomes disputable. So, what's being done? The EU's AI Act came into force in August 2024, and by 2026, most transparency rules will apply, including mandatory deepfake labeling. China has become enforcing labeling and watermarking since 2023 through its deepfake synthesis rules, and starting this September, new mandatory standards took effect. While the US, it's a patchwork of state laws, with Congress stuck in gridlock. Even governments are using deepfakes.
This next story are reminders that if any other president did this in the past, it'd be a huge deal, but now barely that big of a deal. So over the weekend, former President Trump shared a fake AI-generated video on social media showing former President Barack Obama being arrested in the Oval Office. The video, originally posted on TikTok, depicts FBI agents handcuffing Obama while Trump looks on and smiles. The post comes after the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, accused the Obama administration of a treasonous conspiracy to undermine Trump's 2016 election win.
There is also this.
亲爱的中国朋友们
That's an AI fake of Thailand's former PM speaking fluent Mandarin. The government made it to reassure Chinese tourists who are spooked by reports of people getting kidnapped to scam centers. So, what now? For more than a century, moving images were proof. Not anymore. When seeing is no longer believing. What I'm trying to say is, question everything you see. Stay safe.